My name is Kylee Thiel, and I'm the co-author of the Master Budget Project. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. During the 2015-2016 school year, Master Budget Project was tested and evaluated by over 1,500 students at Miami University of Ohio. The current Master Budget Project includes the feedback that we received during this extensive testing period from the instructors and the students. When master budgeting is taught using the static material in a traditional textbook, the students often find the material difficult to understand and, quite frankly, pretty boring. Most of the time, the student just memorizes the material. Master Budget Project solves this learning problem by having the students build their own dynamic profit planning model while reading about each of the budgets. The Master Budget Project consists of a project workbook that contains the Master Budget Project and a series of PDF files that are short, each ranging about 3 to 7 pages in length, with one PDF file for each of the budgets in the project. The primary author, Dan Wiegand, will now review with you how your students will learn master budgeting using the Master Budget Project.
On the screen, we see the files that the student receives when she downloads her Master Budget Project. The first 3 PDF files are used to introduce the student to Master Budgeting and the Master Budget Project. The 4th file, Sales Budget, is the file that the student will read as she prepares her sales budget in her Master Budget Project. The last file in the listing is the Master Budget Project Workbook. Let's now open that workbook and activate the project. The student has now opened her project file and is ready to activate her project. To activate her project, the student would enter her software ID code, which is a unique code that she received when she purchased her project, and her first and last name. She would then click the Activate Project button. She would confirm that her name is correct. As you can see, her first name and last name and her unique software ID code have now been embedded and cannot be changed in her project. She would then start working on the first budget in the Master Budget Project, which is the sales budget. Before we start working on the student's sales budget, let's take a look at the sales budget PDF file to see how it teaches the sales budget to her and takes her through the development process of her sales budget. As previously indicated, there is a PDF file that the student will read as she does each budget in the project. Each one of the PDF files begins by telling the student how to get started on that particular budget. There is then an overview of the budget. The overview reviews the major inputs, calculations, and outputs of the budget. The student is then told to begin wiring up her sales budget. By wiring up, we mean inserting Excel formulas in each of the white cells on the budget. Since this is the first budget that the student will be completing in her project, she is given some directions and tips that apply to all of the budgets in her Master Budget Project. Next, she is given detailed tips for this particular budget. Since this is the first budget that she's working on, her tips are often and fairly detailed. The Master Budget Project assumes very little knowledge to no knowledge of Excel, and thus the student is helped early to develop basic Excel skills that will be needed throughout the project. We see a continuation of both the discussion of the sales budget and tips to help the student along. Once the student has completed wiring up, in this case their sales budget, they are given observations and some additional information about the sales budget, where various line items on the sales budget will be used in future budgets in the project. The student is then directed to complete the 2 multiple choice questions that are below the sales budget. Each of the budgets have 2 multiple choice questions below the budget. The student is then told how to test her budget. After we complete the sales budget, there will be a demonstration of how this testing takes place, and a discussion of why it is unique to the Master Budget Project and so important both for the student and for the instructor. The student is then directed to begin reading the production budget PDF and working on her production budget. There are 1 or 2 pages at the end of each one of the PDF files that give the student detailed instructions of where a line item comes from or how a line item is calculated in that budget. These pages are critical because they make sure that the student is never stumped or stuck while working on her budget, and also these pages greatly reduce and virtually eliminate the number of questions that the student has to ask the instructor about a particular budget. Let's now begin wiring up the sales budget. The student would be following along in her sales budget PDF file that we had just looked at. The first cell, sales in units for the first quarter, has tip box A pointing to it, and that relates to the tip box that we saw in the student's PDF file. In that tip box, it told the student to reference back to the Inputs tab for this input. It would be equals, back to the Inputs tab, and there is the input or the assumption that drives sales in units for the first quarter. The student would then complete the average selling price per unit. Like sales in units, the average selling price is an input from the Inputs tab. It is equal to average selling price for the first quarter. And the student now has sales in units for the first quarter and the average selling price per unit. The next cell has tip box B pointing to it, and that is the first time that the student would be doing a multiplication operation, and she is told how to complete that. It's going to be equal to sales in units in the first quarter times the average selling price for the first quarter, and now the student has completed the first quarter in her sales budget. The student would then complete the second, third, and fourth quarters of sales budget using the same logic she learned by doing the first quarter. Without ever thinking about it, the student's understanding of the sales budget is reinforced as she does the second, third, and fourth quarters. On the screen now is the student's completed sales budget. The student was guided through the completion of their sales budget by reading the sales budget PDF file. Also note below the sales budget, the multiple choice questions have now been completed. Again, the purpose of the multiple choice questions is to encourage the student to read fully the PDF file. One of the important aspects of the Master Budget Project is the ability of the student to check her answers as she is producing her various budgets. Notice the first quarter total dollar sales check amount is given to the student, and she's able, as she completes her budget, to compare total dollar sales produced by her budget to the check amount. Also notice the full year total dollar sales check amount that she's given. This gives her assurance that all of her quarters have been completed correctly. And there are other check amounts for the schedules below the sales budget. There is a second way that the student is able to check or test her budget. Notice the Test My Budget button in the upper right-hand corner of her sales budget. Let's induce an error into her sales budget before we actually click the Test My Budget amount. Suppose that the student incorrectly typed in $448,000 into her total dollar sales for the first quarter rather than putting the appropriate formula. It would appear that her sales budget was producing the correct amounts. But in fact, when the budget was flexed or the inputs changed, her budget will not update correctly. Let's now click the Test My Budget button. What just happened was the inputs were changed, the budget then flexed, new check amounts were inserted, and her budget was tested or checked against those new check amounts. Notice that her first quarter is now shown as an error because her total dollar sales for the first quarter did not update. Also, there are 4 other errors induced by that one error on her budget, and the Test My Budget process is reporting to her that she has 5 incorrect check amounts. If she were to then go back and first find, and then fix her error in the first quarter by inserting the correct formula, and then clicking the Test My Budget button again, She has now shown that all her check amounts are okay and her budget is working correctly. The student's ability to test her budget is important for two main reasons. First, it assures the student that she correctly completed her budget before moving forward to the next budget. Second, it greatly reduces the need for the student to check with her instructor as she completes her master budget project. If a student reads and understands the material in each budget's PDF file and utilizes that understanding to wire up each budget in her profit planning model and runs the two test processes that we just demonstrated, she will have a good understanding of master budgeting and will get a very good grade on her project. And that is the whole purpose of the master budget project. As previously discussed, there is a PDF file for each budget in the master budget project. For each new budget, the student's learning process will be the same as was demonstrated by the sales budget. The student will read about the budget in that budget's PDF file and simultaneously prepare the budget in her project. Let's take a look at the other budgets in the master budget project. The first budget after the sales budget is the production budget. There's a raw materials budget. There is a direct labor budget, manufacturing overhead budget, finished goods, cost of goods sold, selling general and administrative. The last budget is the cash budget. Then we have the forecasted income statement and the forecasted balance sheet. At this point, I hope you are starting to see the real learning benefit that the Master Budget Project will provide to your students. Also at this point, you are more than likely thinking that these projects are going to be a real bear to grade. When you adopt the Master Budget Project for your course, one of the items in your instructor support material will be automatic grading software. Let's take a quick look at how the grading software is used to grade a student's project. To grade a student's project, you will have open the grader and the student's project. You will then click one of the three grading buttons. The first grading button grades the student's project and prints a grade page. The second grading button grades the student's project and now puts a grade page file that can be electronically returned to the student. The third grading button just grades the workbook and displays the grade page. So that you can see how fast a project is graded and what a project grade page looks like, let's click the Just Grade the Workbook button. Just that fast, the student's project has been graded. What the grader does is it changes the inputs in the student's project 3 different times and evaluates the student's answers against the correct answers. The grader then grades the student's multiple choice questions. There are 101 different items graded. We can see that Mary Smith obtained a grade of 100%. As previously indicated, there are multiple versions of the project. The grading software determines which version of the project the student completed and uses the correct answers for that version to evaluate the student's project. Without the grading software, the grading of the Master Budget Project would be very difficult. It is the grading software that makes it possible to utilize this very valuable learning tool in a class of any size. At Miami University, the grading software makes it possible to utilize the Master Budget Project in an introductory managerial accounting course that each semester has 3 sections with over 200 students in each section.
When your students use the Master Budget Project, they will have a tool to actually learn and not just memorize the very important concept of master budgeting. They will also have an understanding of the major role that a dynamic financial model plays in the business planning process. And finally, they will get practice using basic Excel tools while working on their project. The Master Budget Project works equally well in undergraduate and MBA level managerial accounting courses. The project costs $14.75. Your students will purchase and download their projects on our website, masterbudgetaccounting.com. If you have any questions about the project, please contact Dan Wiegand at 513-295-2828 or send him an email at dan.wiegand@miamioh.edu. You can also use our website to request an evaluation copy of our project. Thank you for your interest in the Master Budget Project.